Hello and welcome back to the Library of the Silly Wife. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about Nonfiction November. If you're not familiar with Nonfiction November, it was started by Olive at abookolive, and she wanted to encourage people to read more nonfiction. There are a lot of readers who are either afraid of nonfiction or they just think that, well, I don't think I would enjoy reading nonfiction. And so Olive, every year for the last 4 or 5 years, has given 4 one-word prompts, which are intended to help you pick something to read from nonfiction. And her goal is to get you to read just a little bit more nonfiction than you normally would. So if you normally read 0 nonfiction, then she hopes you'll read 1 nonfiction book during the month of November. If you read normally 1 nonfiction book in a month, then she hopes you'll read 2, and so on and so on. So today I thought I'd talk about her 4 one-word prompts this year and give you an example of how you can use those prompts to come up with your own nonfiction books to read from. So first of all, I do want to clarify that you may hear a lot of background noise because I typically like to film at night, but I don't have time to film tonight, and so my whole family is up and around and active, and it could be noisy. Just giving you the little heads up. So first of all, the first thing I want to mention to you is that the 4 one-word prompts this year are design, sport, true, and voice. So let's just get started, first of all, with the word design. Now you can go a lot of different ways with design. I have a book by Barbara Streisand that is literally the designing of her home. That would be a great one to pick. But there's also other ways to take that word and make it fit what you want to read. So let me give you a couple of examples. First of all, I've got this one, and it is a recommendation. The Most Dangerous Animal of All, Searching for My Father and Finding the Zodiac Killer. This book is by Gary L. Stewart. He began to look through his own family, trying to kind of discover who his father was, and started coming up with some really interesting information. He believes his father was the Zodiac Killer. I don't know if he really was or not, but this book definitely gives you some things that make you go, that might be true. But I picked this one to fit in design. And why? Because the cover, the design of this cover is so cool. It's got a little sleeve that goes over the top and just makes this so creepy. I think this is a great design. And so this one attracts me for that reason. Do you see how I twisted up the prompt there? You can make it whatever you want. So design, that's why I picked this one for design. Now my next recommendation, also in design, is this book by Ken Ham, Dinosaurs of Eden. Did Adam and Noah live with dinosaurs? Now I picked this book for design because this book is all about intelligent design, and it talks about creation, and it talks about what happened to the dinosaurs based on the Bible. If you are a Christian and if you are of the intelligent design belief, this book is fabulous, and it really helps you have an understanding, and it helps your children have an understanding of what happened. There are beautiful illustrations in this one, and it just makes things so clear. I used this as part of our homeschool curriculum last year, and I read through it first, and I enjoyed it, reading it for myself just as much as I know my kids enjoyed it. So this is a good one for you and your kids. So the next word on our list is sport. So you can take this a whole lot of ways. You can go a literal route, which I did with this recommendation, The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown. Now, The Boys in the Boat is about the 1936 Olympics and the boys who were on the rowing team. This book tells how they got to be on the rowing team, and you follow, in particular, you follow one young man and his background and his story, and by doing so, you get to hear and learn the story of everyone else and of the rest of the team. So The Boys in the Boat is probably one of my very favorite nonfiction books I've ever read. This book is kind of a chunker. It's like 500 pages long in this paperback version, but you will not regret it. It is a page turner. You will not want to put it down. It reads very much like a novel, less like a boring history book or something. And you know the history already. You know from history what happens in the 1936 Olympics with the rowing team. But it doesn't matter. You're still on the edge of your seat waiting to see, will they win the gold or not? And I don't believe in spoilers, so just in case you don't know what the history is, I will leave it up to you to read this book. But this one fits perfectly under the prompt sport. Now, stretching it just a little bit is this next recommendation, and it is The Lost City of Zed by David Grann. Now, the reason I picked this one to go under sport is because it is about Percy Fawcett, and he was an explorer. To me, exploration could also be deemed sport. Is that stretching it? Maybe, but if you read it, you'd be reading a nonfiction book and you'd be okay. So I love this book. This is about how Percy Fawcett gets lost while in the Amazon, and about how people searched for him, and it kind of gives you the history of him all leading up to that moment where he goes back to the Amazon and gets lost. This is fascinating. There is so much information in here that I had no idea. I know about the Amazon jungle, but I really wasn't totally aware of some of the information that you're going to hear in here. It is fascinating. And David Grann is a fabulous nonfiction author. He's written some of my other favorite nonfiction books. So in the future, we may talk about that. But today, for this prompt of sport, this one is my recommendation, The Lost City of Zed. And there's a bonus here, too. If you like this book, you might want to watch the movie. I've not seen it. I've heard it was pretty good, so that gives you a little bonus. Now, our next word prompt is true. And there's all of these things are true. I mean, that's sort of the point of nonfiction. They're supposed to be a true story. But I want to show you just how diverse your true can be. So my first suggestion is one that unfortunately may be a little difficult for you to get your hands on, but I want to bring it to your attention anyway. It's a leaflet called The Man-Eating Lions of Tsavo, and it is by Lieutenant Colonel J.H. Patterson. If you have ever seen the movie The Ghost and the Darkness, this book is what that movie is based on. And this little leaflet is, or booklet, is his actual account of the events that happened. I have to say the movie got it pretty close. And I picked this one. There are a lot of books that have been written about the Lions of Tsavo, but I picked this one because it was actually by the man who all these events took place. It's by the man who took care of these lions, etc. So this one is just, it's really fascinating. I think that you can get a hold of this book if you go to the website for the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. I think you can purchase this online, like through their gift shop. So if so, I highly recommend this one because this one, like I said, it is true. It's also about animals, which is fascinating to me. Now, the next thing that I thought about when I thought about true as my prompt was a true crime novel. Now, I call it a novel, but it's nonfiction, so it's not made up. And it is Patricia Cornwell's Portrait of a Killer, Jack the Ripper, Case Closed. This book was written in 2002. It's a little bit controversial. I know that there are a lot of scientists who disagree with her methods. They think that her methods of DNA testing are faulty. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not a scientist. But what I do know is that the writing is great, and it's just keeps you on the edge of your seat as you're wondering, is she right? Has she picked the right guy? Could we finally know who Jack the Ripper is at last? I have to tell you, this book is pretty graphic, so you probably want to be aware of that. Every version of this book that I have seen does contain pictures of Jack the Ripper's victims post-murder. This little paperback version, the pictures are very small, they're not very clear, and so it's not quite so bad. But if you do happen to get your hands on the hardback version, the pictures are much larger and they are much clearer. This is not a book for your children to be looking at by any means. But if those are things that don't bother you, then I highly recommend this one. Again, I'm not making a judgment about whether or not she's right, but since we don't know, it does give you something to think about. My next pick for true seems a little bit on the more obvious side, I think, and that one is 1776 by David McCullough. I love David McCullough. I love the way he treats American history. I have other recommendations from him, hopefully coming up in the future. But this one was my introduction to his writing, and I absolutely love it. David McCullough does write more like a historian rather than a fiction novel writer. However, don't let that scare you, because it's not boring. It's not like reading your history book, okay? It's not that kind. It is occasionally on the brainy side. Again, don't let that scare you. If you have some things you don't understand what he's talking about, just keep going, because it usually does not mess up your being able to understand what's happening in the plot and how things go along. 1776 is all about events that took place in the year 1776. I had no idea just how bad it was for the revolutionaries in 1776. I know growing up, I sort of romanticized the whole thing, the time period of the signing of the Declaration of Independence and being a patriot during those times. But it was not always good. It was very difficult, and they fought long and hard, and a lot of good men died right in the beginning. And so this is an excellent, excellent history. I did not find it boring. This is one of those books that I think I started it maybe from a library book, and then I thought, you know what, I need to buy this because I will want to read this again. So it's not one of his newest works. I mean, it's been out for a while, but boy, it's a real good one, and it's true. 1776. Now, our last prompt was voice. So this one, again, I think that probably what Olive had in mind, and I don't know, I might be totally wrong, but I've got a feeling that she was probably thinking along the lines of people who had something to say about something that was in popular culture today, whether it be racism, misogynistic tendencies of people, whether it be, I don't know, maybe politics. I'm not into that kind of stuff. I hear about it on TV. I don't personally live in an area where we are fighting those issues all the time, and I get sick of hearing about it, if I just want to be honest. And so, to me, I decided to take voice a totally different route. First, I took it very literally, and I'm picking The Story of the Trapp Family Singers by Maria Augusta Trapp. Speaking of voice, they were singers. It's voice. Now, as you can see from some of these, you could actually use a lot of these books to cover almost any of the prompts that you want. I just happened to pick this one for voice, but it could have been true. It could have been design, because all their time they dress like this. even when they came to America, they continued to wear this design of clothing. And she'll tell you all about why they did so in here, and it might not be what you think. But anyhow, this book, oh man, I talked about this in my last video because I was right in the middle of it, and I absolutely loved it. I finished it last week. This one is a 5-star. Now, I might be a little biased because I love the story of The Sound of Music, and I love the whole romance aspect. I love the whole escape from Hitler. I love their faith. And her book talks a lot about their faith. In fact, the whole overarching theme of this book is finding the will of God and doing it wholeheartedly. Even if that means that you don't do what you want to do, even if it means that you have to give up the things that are important to you. It's all about obedience. And so this book, man, it's really good. I felt like I was a part of their family. I laughed with them. I rejoiced with them. I cried and grieved with them. This is just a fabulous, fabulous book. So this one I picked for voice. Also for voice, I decided I would pick a book that was more biographical. And so, yep, I had to pick A Brush with Death by Mark Gentry. Now, in full disclosure, Mark Gentry is my father, and most of you already know that. But I have to say, this one fits the prompt because it is the voice of one person telling the story of their family. And if you were to get a hold of this book, you might even start to read it and think this cannot possibly be nonfiction. This has to be made up. But it's not. It's true. Everything in here is true. And it's just a great read. It's sort of adventurous, and it just tells the story of this family. It has a main theme, which is that because you have ancestry, because you have people who have gone before you, you're never really alone. You have people who have left you with things that will make you better and make you into the person you need to be. And you are also leaving a trail for those who come behind. That's the overarching theme for this book. And so it is voice. So I hope that these recommendations kind of help you if you decide, you know what, I've heard about this Nonfiction November, but I'm not sure exactly how it works. And I hope this maybe gives you some ideas. If you don't like any of these one-word prompts and you find a nonfiction book and you can't figure out any way to make it fit, Olive says read it anyway, because the point is not to get you to match her thoughts and her prompts. The whole point is to get people to read nonfiction and to learn that there is some really great nonfiction out there. So I hope this helps you a little bit, and I hope you pick up some great nonfiction, and I'll see you in the next video.